There is a particular quietness that surrounds a Sigma male, a stillness that doesn't need to announce itself. It is not the silence of insecurity nor the silence of avoidance. It is the silence of a man who is deeply at peace with who he is and what he brings into the world. And for many women, this stillness is the first thing they notice before anything else. Most men try to charm the world with noise, attention, and performative confidence. But Sigma men move differently. They don't pursue validation. They don't shape shift to win affection. They don't perform masculinity. They live it. This subtle difference, almost invisible at first glance, creates a psychological effect that women rarely experience yet can't easily forget. Something about a Sigma male feels grounded and grounding. A woman who falls for a Sigma often describes the sensation as surprising, not because he does anything extraordinary, but because he does so little, yet impacts her so profoundly. He is present without being intrusive. He is kind without being performative. He is confident without needing to broadcast it. His strength is not in the volume of his actions, but in the stability of his presence. This presence activates a very old, very human response in a woman's psyche. Not excitement, but safety. Not adrenaline, but admiration. Not chaos, but quiet, emotional resonance. And when a woman is in love with a Sigma male, she begins to behave in ways that reveal this internal shift, even if she never puts it into words. This video is not about theatrics or exaggerated romance. It is about the subtle behavioral patterns women exhibit when their emotional guard has been quietly but completely lowered. These signs are small, soft, and often unnoticed by the Sigma himself because he is not searching for them. But they are unmistakable to anyone who pays attention. What follows is a slow, steady breakdown of how women genuinely act when they fall in love with a Sigma male, drawn from psychological research, attachment theory, and the lived experiences of high-value men who have walked this path. Take your time with each point. Let it unfold gently. This is not about excitement. This is about understanding the quiet truth beneath human behavior. Number one, she becomes calm around him. A Sigma male naturally regulates the emotional environment around him in ways that are both subtle and scientifically fascinating. Women who fall in love with him quickly notice changes in their own emotional patterns. They speak more softly, their breathing slows, and a sense of grounded peace settles over them. This isn't manipulation, nor is it a rehearsed strategy. It is emotional entrainment, a well-documented psychological and neurological phenomenon where the nervous system of one person subtly synchronizes with the emotional rhythm of another. Studies in interpersonal neurobiology show that humans unconsciously mirror the dominant emotional frequency in their environment, a process driven by mirror neurons and the autonomic nervous system. When someone with high emotional regulation and low reactivity is present, the people around them instinctively recalibrate to that stable energy. A Sigma male's calm is not an act. It's a practiced internal equilibrium shaped by independence, self-awareness, and an intuitive understanding of his own boundaries. As a result, women in love with him don't feel pressured to be someone else. They feel invited to return to their natural emotional baseline. His quiet tone signals safety. His steady presence communicates reliability, and his non-reactive demeanor tells her subconscious mind that there's no threat to defend against. Psychology research confirms that people relax around individuals who display consistent behavioral patterns, low emotional volatility, and high self-mastery. In relationships, this creates an environment where emotional turbulence naturally subsides. Conversations become deeper and slower paced, eye contact becomes softer, and moments of silence feel warm rather than uncomfortable. His presence alone becomes a regulating force, gently guiding her nervous system toward clarity and calm. This is why women often describe feeling lighter or more themselves around Sigma males. The effect isn't about dominance or control. It is about alignment. Just as two musical instruments tune to the same frequency when played near each other, emotional entrainment causes her internal state to harmonize with his. In a world full of overstimulation and emotional noise, the Sigma's quiet steadiness stands out as a kind of refuge. She instinctively leans into it, not because he demands her attention, but because her mind and body recognize the peace he carries. Over time, this creates a deeply intimate bond built on trust, safety, and psychological coherence. Her love grows not through intensity, but through the profound ease he brings into her life. Number 2, she studies his silence. Most men fill silence with chatter. The Sigma fills it with meaning. A woman who falls in love with a Sigma male enters an entirely different emotional landscape, one that is quieter, deeper, and far more intentional than she may be used to. Instead of rushing to fill empty space with noise, the Sigma lets silence breathe. And because silence is often where truth lives, she begins to tune into him in a way that is almost intuitive. Psychologically, this is called heightened attunement, a phenomenon where someone becomes increasingly sensitive to another person's emotional cues, micro-expressions, and subtle shifts in behavior. Studies in interpersonal communication consistently show that up to 65% of human communication is nonverbal, meaning that what we say without words carries more emotional weight than the words themselves. The Sigma embodies this principle effortlessly. His measured pauses, his thoughtful glances, and the calm steadiness he carries all communicate volumes. A woman in love with such a man learns to listen differently. She listens not only with her ears, but also with her awareness. In the Sigma's silence, she perceives clarity instead of confusion. His quiet is not avoidance, but contemplation. His lack of unnecessary words is not emotional distance, but emotional discipline. Over time, this silence becomes a place she wants to understand rather than escape, because it feels safe, grounded, and real, a contrast to the performative noise that so many men fall into when trying to impress. Evolutionary psychology suggests that women are naturally drawn to men who display self-control, emotional stability, and confidence without arrogance. The Sigma expresses all of these through his quiet presence. His silence signals that he is not desperate for validation, not overwhelmed by ego, and not driven by the frantic need to be seen. Instead, he is self-contained. He thinks before he speaks. And in an age of constant distraction, this level of inner composure is rare and magnetic. A woman in love begins to admire the depth behind his restraint. She senses that his silence is where his authenticity resides. For her, understanding him becomes a journey, one that draws her into his world rather than pushing her away. And as she grows more attuned to him, she realizes that love with a Sigma is not found in grand speeches or dramatic gestures. It is found in the spaces between words, in the unspoken truths, and in the profound serenity of a man who communicates more with silence than most do with endless conversation. Number 3, she adopts his pace. A Sigma's movements are slow, deliberate, and intentional, and without ever trying, he creates an atmosphere that subtly reshapes the emotional landscape around him. When a woman falls in love with a Sigma male, she begins to synchronize with this quiet, centered energy in ways that are often invisible on the surface, yet deeply meaningful beneath it. She walks a little slower beside him, not out of hesitation, but because she feels safe enough to breathe. She starts taking more time before she speaks, allowing her thoughts to settle rather than rushing to fill silence. Even her lifestyle choices gradually shift toward a simpler, cleaner, more intentional rhythm. This transformation is not imitation in the superficial sense. It is an unconscious psychological process known as mirroring, a scientifically documented behavior in which humans subtly reflect the body language, pacing, habits, and emotional patterns of those they feel deeply bonded with. Neuroscience attributes this phenomenon to mirror neurons, specialized brain cells that activate both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that same action. These neurons play a fundamental role in empathy, emotional attachment, and social bonding. In relationships, mirroring becomes a quiet language of connection. When a woman mirrors a Sigma male, it is not because he demands it, but because she intuitively aligns with his emotional frequency. His calm presence becomes a safe harbor, and her nervous system naturally shifts from urgency to ease. She finds herself choosing slower mornings, cleaner spaces, and more intentional thoughts, because his way of existing feels like an upgrade to her own peace. This is where the Sigma's influence becomes both subtle and profound. His silence encourages her openness. His steadiness grounds her whirlwind, and his minimalist approach inspires her to unclutter not only her environment, but also her inner world. She begins valuing presence over performance, depth over noise, and quality over quantity. These changes reflect a hallmark of secure attachment, the psychological state where a person feels balanced, protected, and emotionally attuned. A Sigma male doesn't force this transformation, he embodies it. And through simple proximity, a woman who loves him naturally steps into the same frequency. What begins as unconscious mirroring often evolves into conscious appreciation. She realizes she smiles more easily, thinks more clearly, and moves through life with a newfound steadiness. This is the gentle power of a Sigma male's influence. Not loud, not commanding, but deeply anchoring. And when a woman aligns with it, love becomes not just a feeling, but a shared, peaceful rhythm. Number 4, she protects the bond quietly. Sigma males attract a very specific kind of loyalty, one that operates quietly rather than loudly. When a woman truly loves a Sigma male, her behavior shifts into a mode of protection, devotion, and emotional clarity. She doesn't parade the relationship or broadcast every detail to friends, co-workers, or social media. This isn't secrecy born out of shame, but privacy born out of deep regard. Modern psychology calls this a secure attachment tendency, the instinct to preserve what feels valuable rather than expose it to unnecessary opinions, drama, or interference. Unlike insecure attachments, which often rely on external validation, constant reassurance, or public displays to feel real, a secure bond is defined by inner confidence. A woman who loves a Sigma male doesn't need the world to confirm the connection because she feels its truth in her nervous system, calmness, stability, and emotional predictability. She understands that the Sigma's world is intentionally minimal, free from noise and social theatrics, and she naturally adjusts to match that grounded rhythm. Her loyalty becomes discreet because the relationship itself becomes a sacred space where she feels safe, understood, and emotionally respected. Women often mirror the emotional patterns of the men they love, and sigmas, who value independence, emotional control, and low-drama living, tend to inspire women to step into their own secure, self-regulated energy. Studies in attachment theory show that emotionally stable partners unconsciously promote similar stability in the people closest to them. And this is exactly what happens here. She keeps details private, not because she's hiding anything, but because she feels no urge to seek external approval. The bond becomes its own ecosystem, thriving quietly without outside influence. Entertainment aside, there's a fascinating psychological dynamic at play. Sigmas often represent what researchers call low-reactive personalities, individuals who approach the world with calm observation instead of emotional reactivity. This temperamental trait creates a sense of emotional safety for partners, reducing the need for gossip or oversharing as coping mechanisms. Instead of discussing every conflict with outsiders, she communicates directly with him because the connection feels emotionally mature. Instead of posting everything online, she protects the relationship because it feels meaningful. Instead of letting others' voices shape her thinking, she trusts the bond because it is rooted in authenticity rather than performance. In the end, her discreet loyalty becomes a reflection of the Sigma male's own emotional discipline. Their connection is not built through spectacle, but through understanding, respect, and emotional steadiness. It is quiet, but not weak, private, but not distant, sacred, but never secret. Number 5, she brings him peace instead of problems. A Sigma male does not chase chaos, and this single truth quietly reshapes how a woman behaves when she truly loves him. In psychology, the principle behind this dynamic is known as emotional homeostasis, the natural human tendency to match the emotional climate of someone we value. Because the Sigma carries a calm, self-governed presence, a woman who loves him instinctively shifts her own energy to align with his. She begins reducing unnecessary drama, not out of fear, but out of respect for the sanctuary he creates. Research in interpersonal relationships shows that people naturally regulate their emotions to preserve the connections they cherish. In this case, she recognizes that his peace is not just a personality trait, but a cornerstone of how he moves through life. So she chooses clarity over confusion, not because she is trying to perform, but because she genuinely wants to be understood by him. Her communication becomes more grounded, more thoughtful, and more intentional. Instead of approaching him with emotional storms or impulsive reactions, she brings solutions, reflections, and a sincere desire to resolve rather than escalate. This is not about suppressing her feelings. It is about maturing them. She becomes more self-aware, more attuned to her triggers, and more conscious of how she expresses herself. The Sigma's emotional stability subtly inspires her to become a calmer, stronger version of herself. What makes this dynamic powerful is that it happens naturally, not forcefully. Behavioral psychology calls this emotional entrainment, the process where one steady emotional frequency influences another. His silence teaches her patience. His composure teaches her balance. His independence teaches her not to cling, but to connect consciously. And in return, she offers him something equally rare, a peaceful feminine presence that complements rather than complicates his solitude. Women in love with Sigma males often describe feeling safer, more grounded, and more emotionally regulated just by being around them. This is because the Sigma's refusal to tolerate chaos creates an atmosphere where only authenticity survives. She wants to remain a source of serenity, not disruption, because she knows his attention is not captured by noise. It is drawn to emotional depth, steady character, and a woman who values peace as much as he does. So she rises. She softens. She strengthens, not to impress him, but because loving a Sigma male invites her into a higher version of herself, one where clarity replaces confusion and emotional turbulence gives way to calm, intentional connection. Number 6, she tries to understand his inner world. When a woman truly falls in love with a Sigma male, curiosity evolves into something far deeper and more intentional. A quiet form of devotion shaped by observation, respect, and emotional intelligence. Instead of trying to mold him or influence his identity, she becomes fascinated by the subtle architecture of his inner world. Psychologists note that humans naturally study what they value, and her attention becomes a sign of genuine attachment. She starts noticing the way he pauses before answering a question, the rhythms of his daily routines, the values that guide his decisions, and the understated preferences he rarely voices out loud. Unlike relationships built on performance or pursuit, a woman who loves a Sigma adopts a patient, almost meditative interest in understanding him. This reflects a psychological phenomenon known as responsive curiosity, where the desire to know someone is driven not by insecurity or control, but by admiration and emotional alignment. She realizes that the Sigma's solitude is not a rejection, but a sanctuary, and she approaches it with the same care someone would bring into a sacred space. Modern research in attachment theory also shows that people feel most connected when they are seen without being pressured to change. And this is exactly what she gives him: space to remain himself. Rather than pushing him into the social expectations he silently rejects, she adjusts her pace to match his, learning his emotional language without forcing her own. Over time, her curiosity becomes a steady form of loyalty. She doesn't chase his attention. She honors his presence. She doesn't interrupt his quiet. She learns to move within it. And slowly, almost naturally, the Sigma begins letting her deeper into the realm he rarely opens to anyone. Her devotion is not loud, dramatic, or demanding. It is thoughtful, observant, and rooted in a genuine desire to understand the man behind the silence.